Join David and Ross as they become discombobulated in Dorset. From pixies to poltergeists, witches to woodwose, hear them explore the legends, folklore, and outright weirdness of their own county. This is Dark Dorset, a podcast of weird horses.
Welcome to Dark Dorset Episode 1. I'm Ross in Dorchester.
And I'm David in Wareham.
And this is the inaugural episode of our newest podcast, all about weird stuff in Dorset. And the first weird thing we're going to be looking at is something which me and David have talked about, I think probably as long as we've known each other. Is
many years. The
Woodwose. So this episode is brought to you by my local beverage, is a bottle of Dark Ages Vanilla Porter from Copper Street Brewery, which Copper Street Brewery is a small microbrewery by Dorchester train station around the corner from me. I don't know what it doesn't smell like vanilla, but it says here. I'm going to read off the back.
What does it taste like?
I haven't tried it yet. It tastes like vanilla-y chocolate. It's very nice.
Lovely. It's not the one you sent me the photo of the other day.
Oh no, that's for the next episode, David. Which is so this one.
Drunk that.
It says, unlike the Dark Ages, there's no mystery to the character of this robust porter. A complex base of 6 malts provides a rich, satisfying body, which is supplemented with the bitterness from Northern Brewer hops finished with the Challenger hops to generate a delicate floral aroma. David, what do you know what a porter is? What the difference between a porter and what is it?
It's like it's one down from a stout, I think. So it's like traditionally kind of a winter beer, but it's not as heavy as a stout. Okay. Yeah, like a Guinness would be like a stout, very thick and opaque, where a porter, you can see a little bit more light through, but it's generally dark. I want to say they're quite northern, but that might just be terribly prejudiced. But they're delicious, aren't they?
It's very nice. I highly recommend this one. And this will be my drink of the evening.
There's one they make at Cerne Abbas called Gert Coconut Stout, something, and it's rum and coconut flavour, and it's about 8%.
Oh, this is only 5.5. So this is a 5.5 episode. So I thought there would be like a crossover between local folklore and stuff like that and beer, because I feel like this is the sort of stuff you would talk about in the pub.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was when I went to get my local beers, I left it to the last minute, and I was very disappointed with my local nearest place to buy bottles. Don't frequent there very much, more of a pub drinker. But so I didn't get anything nearly as local as you that you can walk to and back within half an hour. I've got a beer from Bristol by a brewery called Buckham that I did think were in Devon.
Yeah,
and it's better pronounced Buckham, obviously. And I've got their Gorham IPA, holding up to the camera. And it's named after Gorham the Giant.
Oh, nice.
Which I thought was very suitable while I'm talking to you to have a beer named after a giant. It's Bristol's legendary giant was no stranger to a well-crafted ale. Fortunately, neither are we. I can't read this around my glasses. Blah, 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 blah. Gorham towers above all others.
So how does yours smell and taste, David?
Smells like beer. And it tastes like beer.
Very good.
It's an IPA. It's very nice, actually. It's very sweet. It's 5%.
Okay.
It's and it's quite cold, which is nice on a day like today. I don't think we'll never do a kind of beer review podcast, will we? Not at this level.
Yeah, definitely without. Well, you know a little bit more about them than I do. So hopefully you'll bring the beer knowledge to this, and maybe we'll learn something over the time that we're doing these podcasts. Maybe. So David, Woodwose. So we've been. I think we bonded over a love of hairy men.
It's nice. It's nice to talk to a hairy man without looking in the mirror.
Yes, and I think I think some of our earliest conversations were about Bigfoot and the such. And I seem to remember that I did some research to see if there were Dorset-based Bigfoot, and that's where we found out about the Woodwose.
And that was years ago, because I think we went walking in the woods, didn't we? Trying to look for their nests
Yeah.
and dens and scare your kids with it.
Yeah.
But that was maybe 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But it was nice. We went out recently as well.
Yes.
And we went to the traditional home of the Woodwose.
So you've done some research and found where do the Woodwose live?
Well, the Dorset Woodwose is famous for living in Yellowham Woods.
So I've looked up Yellowham in my Dorset Place Names book, which I think is going to be a regular feature on our podcast. So Yellowham Hill and Woods in Puddletown. The earliest known reference to it is Glowam, which was in 1270. I think so. And that the two words Geolu, just Geolu, and ham mean yellow and enclosure. So they think that the yellow were allude to either the soil or yellow flowers in the area, but it's been called that since at least 1270. Yeah,
that's very good. That's before the Dorchester bypass was built.
Before the A35, which is very close to the poor Woodwose and best keep them up.
So I think it was originally it was a bigger forest with actually a lot of heathland there.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Second World War, it was cleared, and a kind of pine plantation built or planted instead. And I think that's where a lot of the Puddletown Forest comes from, which is on the other side of the A35. But we stuck to Yellowham Woods, which is the traditional place of the Woodwose. We had seen some videos on YouTube, that one recently actually from this year, and I don't think they were in Yellowham Woods at all because we couldn't find a car park whatsoever, could we?
No.
All the tracks we walked up were a lot wilder.
We did see some bits of, say, private property, and we did steer away from those because doing some research online, we was warned that there were certain parts we shouldn't be going into, but this did look like it was a legitimate track, I think, because it did have some information about where we are and how to call for help and all that kind of stuff, which I don't think I've seen in parts in this country, which was a little bit ominous. That are we going to need to have?
Well, I think it's either for two reasons. One is that as part of Puddletown Forest, it comes under the same kind of jurisdiction of the Forestry Commission, and there's lots of mountain biking. Mountain bike tracks.
Oh, okay.
Like off-road tracks through the forest. So it's very popular with cyclists, which can come a cropper and need to phone for emergency services.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are wild men living in the woods
who might rip you to
that do attack young girls and drag them away.
Yes.
So, and that's really the legend, I suppose, of Woodwose, isn't it? That dates from the kind of 8th, 16th centuries is about these wild men living in the woods.
Tell us about that, David, because you were telling us that that part of town was a specific sort of area for outsiders to be encamped.
Yeah. So I read that Yellowham Woods was almost a barrier to Dorchester, and if travellers were coming through and the Dorchester townfolk didn't like the look of them, they wouldn't let them into town.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd get encampments of travellers in the woods, in Yellowham Woods. Some would only stay a night or two and pass through. Others might kind of, be there a bit longer. And if that was the case, people used to sneak out from the town after dark and terrorise them,
mm-hmm.
Set fires and throw stones and the likes there. Yeah. Which I can imagine them doing today if we'd stayed there.
Yeah, exactly. So there was also some we've done a video of our trip to Yellowham, so there'll be a link to that on the show notes for this episode. We've also got a Dark Darset YouTube channel, so go and look that up. We're on there. But something you did tell me, which I felt somehow when I did that video, I filmed most of it upside down, and half of it I thought I was recording.
Spooky in itself.
Yeah, half of it when I thought I was recording, I wasn't. So I got a lot of footage of inside my pocket. So I completely missed a bit when you was telling me about all the different ways a Woodwose can be pronounced. So
yeah, so when we first started looking for him, I was under the impression that S was a D.
Okay.
And I think we were calling it Woodwode, which I quite like the sound of.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds better in the mouth, doesn't it?
Mm.
But Woodwose, so it's WOSE, which is Old English for man, so man of the woods. But I've heard it pronounced Woodwose, as if it's got two O's in it. And I also heard it called Woodwose.
Oh.
A bit like a mouse.
Yes.
So Woodwose, but yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure.
Quite the oos.
Oos.
Yeah, there's a woodwose. Loose about this hoose. What else have you learned about the Woodwose, Damon?
What else have I learned? Well, the thing that I think that got our attention last time was the fact that there's some discussion about whether the Woodwose is a Bigfoot or is just a wild man. The line that caught our imagination were that the Woodwose used to lure young ladies into the woods or kidnap young ladies, take them into the woods, impregnate them, and then let them run back to Dorchester. And I think there was a line when a young lady was up in court, and she says, "No, Your Honour, I've been impregnated by the wild man of Yellowham Woods." So it could just be an excuse for keeping the father of your unborn child secret when you're doing things you shouldn't out of wedlock. But it could actually be a wild man or a Bigfoot. If the Woodwose is actually related to Bigfoot type, is actually a beast, then having sex with humans, kind of improbable. But it does mean that there could be hybrids running around Dorchester of half humans, half wild beasts.
Yes.
And that could mean that there are still descendants of Woodwose out there today. And there were stories that these hybrid offspring weren't really seen or noticed because they would take jobs in the fields and on the farms and never really go into town. And I must say, looking around Dorchester today, I know a few people in the villages, and I think they're just as hairy and wild as we are.
Yeah. I love that idea. But I think it's interesting that it'd be interesting to see at what point a Woodwose was considered to potentially be a non-human rather than just someone who lives in the woods, because I feel like maybe like the idea of Bigfoot and Yeti and stuff that may have come from other countries, something which come from native what do you call First Nation people in America or people in Tibet, and then we maybe sort of put that over this existing legend we had of a wild person who lives in the woods. I can imagine that there were people who wanted to keep themselves separate from other people, and I've got quite a lot of books here about like witchcraft and stuff like that, and it feels like we humans have got a great history of ostracizing people who are slightly different to them, giving them names, othering them, making sure that it's someone you can almost put sort of bestial connotations onto them, so therefore make them less human, so therefore it lets you off the hook from being absolutely horrible to other people. So it feels like that's probably where this came from. But I think something else which we found is that the Green Man, the legend of the Green Man, that could be something which is again a crossover between the idea of the Woodwose as well. So
and I was reading today, Ross, that if you were living in the woods, and I can't imagine there's that much food around at certain times of the year, and especially if you were being ostracized from a community and you were poor and you had no money, you had to fend for yourself all of a sudden, or chose to fend for yourself, then you could get very near starvation. And there is, as a result of starvation, the body can grow very fine hair all over.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a scientific thing. So the hairy men of the woods could have been these wild men that chose to live alone or were kicked out of their communities, very, very hungry, and started taking on this hairy appearance.
Oh, that's grossed me out. Well, I've started a day on grossed out because we've got some like ferns in our bedroom. But because it's been so hot, this is we're recording this in July of 2022. Yeah, I can never
just after the heat wave.
Exactly. So we've had all the shutters shut in our bedroom, so it's been very hot and dark. And I've open up the blinds, and there's mushrooms growing in the bottom of our ferns, which grossed me out because I just had the idea of like spores and stuff being in there. So then my first thing I googled was can mushrooms grow on people? And then I found a picture of
you've got to shower at least once a week, right?
Yeah, I know. But there was pictures of Google started saying can mushrooms grow in people's ears? So obviously I clicked on that and it showed this picture of the microscopic little mushrooms growing inside people's ears and stuff. And so I've been grossed out all day. And now the idea of tiny hairs growing on malnutrition, dirty men in the woods is just tipped me over the edge.
But I think if you were walking through the woods and you saw a solitary man or a group of men like that would get you talking, wouldn't it? When you got back home, that is how some of these folklores I think probably come into.
So we didn't find any hairy men in the woods, but we did find something quite strange and unusual.
Oh my god! Yeah. So we after watching a couple of videos on YouTube that were very effective at giving you goosebumps, but they were quite easily to see through and pretty much fake. We decided not to go to Yellowham Woods at night.
Yes.
Which is good because we didn't really know where we were going. The tracks we took through the woods were quite overgrown old forestry tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And we started off quite jovial and taking the mick. We saw some pulled down, crossed over trees almost straight away, which were quite weird. So they must have been about 20, 30 foot tall trees, possibly a diameter of no more than kind of 8 inches. But the tops were pulled all the way down to the ground, so it bent over this big arch. And another tree was pulled over the top of that, so it made a kind of cross on the arch. And that was, I've never seen a tree in that shape.
No, as David said, unnatural.
And obviously, there's this spooky thing about you're not being able to film anything upright and or out of your pocket. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, so that was the first thing we saw. We saw a few footprints that we think we could easily describe as being kind of dog or deer, or they weren't that big. There were a few things moved in the trees at times, in the bushes, that kind of made us stop walking and talking and freak out a bit. But then you could see a bird leaving it, or a squirrel at times. And I think that. So we walked to one end of the path. We took the right turn, and that became a dead end. So we headed back on ourselves. The left, towards the end of the left path, that's when things got a bit more interesting. So first off, it's mostly coniferous. That's right. Yeah, it's kind of pine forest, very mature kind of pine forest. And at the end of the left-hand route of the path, we found the only oak tree. Had quite a girth on her.
It was a girthy oak.
Yeah, good old girthy oak. You couldn't get your arms around if you hugged it. So easily over 100, 200 years old, I imagine. So a big tree that would have stood there right at.
Would have seen a woodrose if there was woodrose times.
And at that point, we decided to leave the path and walk through the thicket. And that's where things got quite interesting. So first of all, we saw a witchcraft type mark on the tree, didn't we? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I got a picture of that. I don't know. It was kind of like almost like a shield with like spikes on it. But yeah, it was someone had carved a shape into the tree. For what purpose? I don't know.
It'd been there a while. It didn't look like a wayfinding mark.
No, or a forestry, like cut this tree down mark.
No. So that was a bit spooky, and that's where things got interesting. Then we saw a leaf, didn't we? Hovering like a ghost. So we're wandering in and out of these. It was quite thick, quite brittle lower branches because they're dead. There's not much light in there at that point. It was very dark. It was very brown. Very dry. Got sunglasses on, which is good because some of these branches were kind of poking our eyes as we were walking through with our hands in front of our faces. And then all of a sudden, there was a flash of bright green, which really stood out from the darkness. and it was a tiny little leaf. I don't remember seeing any trees with leaves around, and it was just floating in midair at our eye level, and it was kind of dancing around, wasn't it? Going an inch or so to the left, an inch or so to the right, up, down, and it was really spooky.
Yeah. Yes.
It was almost like it was caught in a cobweb.
It was almost as if it was in a cobweb, but we're not going to be cynical and say that it was obviously something supernatural, not just a leaf in a cobweb.
Obviously, and that's on our YouTube.
That's on our videos. Check that out.
Yeah,
but
then
all of that aside, the actual thing which was spooky.
Then the kind of shit hit the fan, didn't it? Mm-hmm. It was we almost walked into it, and it was quite grim. Quite disgusting. I poked it with a stick at one point, and you told me not to.
Yeah, it made me feel a bit sick.
It fell apart.
Yeah. So I don't know how to describe it. It was like it was like the pounce of an Alsatian or something. It was hair, wasn't it? It was quite a sizable
clump of hair stuck in a tree at our kind of head level. Mm-hmm. It was if you picked it up, it would be a very good couple of handfuls.
Yeah,
it was the. But
it was like attached. It was attached to skin. It wasn't just hair. It wasn't like
yeah, and it wasn't one color. It was kind of white, then black, then white again. So it was like, and it was very coarse hair.
Yeah,
and probably about an inch and a half long. So it definitely wasn't a cat.
Mm-hmm.
It
could have been a dog. It was very wet and.
It had been there a long time, and it was rotting and manky. But it looked
badger. Maybe?
Badger. I really don't. I've sent it to a few people who are very outdoorsy people, and no one can tell me what it is yet. But yeah,
I don't know how that thing got up into that tree. So something had pulled that off of an animal and put it up in the tree.
So it's either some food that the Woodwose has put there to come back for later, or he could have been. There could have been two other guys looking for Woodwose, and the Woodwose has run through the forest to escape and hide.
And ripped the chunk of itself off.
Yeah. So that was horrible.
Most likely neither of those things, but whatever it was, it was gross, and it was. I can't see how naturally a lump of something's hide could have been like suspended in a tree like that. So check out the video and tell us what you think that was.
I think also both you and I had just watched the film The Ritual.
Yes.
And in that film, there's a group of hikers from the UK who are on a boys' weekend, and they're walking through the mountains of. Are they meant to be in Sweden? They take a shortcut. Yeah, they take a shortcut through the forest, and they get lost, and it's dark. And they look up, and at one point, there's a huge carcass of a deer suspended in the trees, slit open, dripping on the floor. So it was very, apart from the fact it was smaller and it wasn't fresh, it was very reminiscent of that scene.
Yeah. And just to say, if you want to hear a review, me and David review that, go to my other podcast, which is called General Witchfinders, which is a horror podcast, and we had David on as a guest reviewing that film. So General Witchfinders, we do something called Folk and How, which has like folk horror stuff, and there's an episode on there about The Ritual. Go and check that out. So I completely ruined our flow there with a plug, but it's all about cross pollination, isn't it?
Yeah. So we saw that. We then saw a very big fallen tree that would make the perfect place to sit. So within view of that scraggy hair thing, we sat down for about an hour. We made ourselves a coffee. On a little stove, and we did what the Bigfoot Hunters do on the American TV show, and we whooped and we hollered and we called and we threw stones and we banged sticks, hoping that a Woodwose would reply. And I've read something tonight online, Ross, that said in 2014 someone did go to Yellowham and they did knock on the trees and something knocked back. But whatever was there then was not at home when we were there.
No, I'm afraid not. But we did see a llama, which David mistook for a giraffe. So Even if we did see something, it wouldn't be a reliable eyewitness account because David can't tell the difference between a llama and a giraffe.
Fuck me, it's a giraffe. It had a very long neck.
Yeah.
Some sheep walked past the other side of a fence, and and then there were there's those small kind of bird things as well, like turkeys or not turkeys. Not turkey. That's a conversation we've had earlier today. Not turkey. Partridges or something, weren't they?
Yes. So, David, have you any other additional Woodwose facts which you need to spur on us, because I can see that we're coming up to our half hour?
Well, there is, since the 16th century, the most famous sighting is in Salford in 1982.
Oh, 1982.
1982, in Salford, Manchester, where a couple of girls were in a park, and one of them, she's described as a Bigfoot hunter, but she was 15 at the time, so maybe I don't think she was a famous Bigfoot hunter when she was 15.
Yeah, and she was in Salford, so I don't know what she was looking for a Bigfoot in Salford for.
Yeah. So she turned around and saw a Bigfoot or a Woodwose looking at her from the hedge, and it looked kind of puzzled, and then turned and ran away, and they went home.
Okay.
So
compelling.
Yeah. 2014 apparently was the last, I say sighting, but
that sounds
encounter with the Woodwose in Yellowham Woods where one did knock back. And I think we need to go back and leave it another offering.
Knock some more wood in the Yellowham. So, David, what do we think is Woodwose wheel?
Woodwose wheel.
Yeah,
I think it's a very good excuse if you get pregnant out of wedlock.
Exactly.
When it's legal. I think there are too many depictions of hairy, wild, green men in UK kind of culture dating back centuries. They're in engravings, they're in songs, they're in tales. I think there must be some hermit type figures living in the woods, in absolute poverty, starving, growing fine hair all over their bodies and mushrooms in their ears, and being ridiculed and ostracized by everyone else.
Yeah.
And I know how they feel.
Yeah. I think, if the cost of living crisis does increase, I think there probably will be more Woodwose sightings as people drop off the grid and just go and eat acorns and llamas and partridges in Yellowham Forest. But I'm afraid I'm not convinced that there's anything around anymore. It was good.
It was great fun to go and have a look, though.
It was good to go and look for them. And
check out our YouTube video.
Yeah, and if anything, the Woodwose cemented mine and David's friendship. So there is that.
Yes.
That's the end of this episode of Dark Dorset. If you've got anything weird from Dorset and around Dorset you think we should do some investigation on, please let us know. You can email us at darkdorset@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter and talk to us on there at Dark Dorset, which is I should spell that DARZET. However, you've downloaded this, you can look at the title and the logo. But until next time, happy day. Bye bye.
Stay weird. Thank you. Bye.
If you knows of any weirdness you'd like to share with David and Ross, you can tell them by email at darkdorset@gmail.com, or post to them on Twitter at darkdorset. Well, until next time, stay discombobulated. Stay discombobulated. Stay discombobulated. Stay discombobulated.
Something which we expostulated. What's the word for it? something which we thought about off the back of that, but I was trying to use a long word there. I can't. I'm halfway through this bottle of beer and I can't say.
That's good.
Expostulated? I don't know.
If